Hands are something that a lot of artists don't really seem to enjoy drawing, despite being such a small part of the body. Kind of like the hand is quite complex and structured, so even small mistakes are quite noticeable. I've been laying off arm and hand anatomy for too long, so let's finally start. I'm Cora. I decided to restart my art journey from the very beginning. My fear and laziness of learning anatomy is slowly but surely getting conquered. There's a few things that I didn't mention or establish earlier. Only muscle fibers grows, so something like tendons that connects the muscles to the bones don't really grow as much as muscle fibers. Okay, I'm actually not sure if they even grow at all. Muscles are quite flexible and can change form. When muscles retract or become active in some way, they will appear bigger. And when you extend them, they stretch out. To study arm and hand anatomy, just like the last video, I used psychotboy.com and Mark Burnett's 3D anatomy model. I also watched Draw Like a Sir and David Finch's video on hands. And finally, Loomis again, baby, specifically his books on heads and hands. The PDF will be in the description. And a warning for anyone who's learning how to draw for the first time, which I kind of forgot about in my last few videos. These videos are mostly meant to be notes. I would still recommend searching for more guides, tutorials, and exercises, and not just rely on my video. Let's start with the bones. First we have the humerus. The length of the humerus is about the same length of the rib cage, or a tiny bit longer, and it attaches to the scapula. Now for the forearm bones, there's the radius and the ulna. The ulna will connect a bit behind the humerus here, while the radius attaches to the very end. They're a bit smaller than the humerus. The forearm bones have a notable function. We got the elbow here, right? And on the other side of the elbow, you can see that the muscles create sort of like a dent here. The dent is pretty clear when the palms are facing upwards. But when the arms are stretched out and the palms has been rotated to face downwards, the dent is still pretty visible. Just a bit more on the side now. This is because when you rotate the palm downwards, the radius and ulnar will actually crush each other. This will be important since a lot of muscles are attached to them, and the muscles will twist along with them as well. Now for the muscles on the arm. For the upper arms, we got the triceps and biceps. Most of them will attach from the scapula and will attach to the forearm. The triceps got a big tendon here, and it's pretty visible on bodybuilders. Between the biceps and triceps is the deltoid, and also the brachialis. Now for the forearm muscles, two similar muscles, the brachioradialis and the extensor carpi radialis longus. These two will go towards the thumb, and you can see that they kind of wrap around the brachialis from earlier. Again, very visible on bodybuilders. We can simplify it by splitting each of these into two groups. There is a group of muscles here on top of the forearm that is responsible for extending your fingers, and a group of muscles below your forearm that is responsible for flexing your fingers. They are all connected from the end of the humerus all the way to your fingertips. Each muscle can be visible, but for the sake of the length of this video and simplicity, I will not cover how to draw each individual part. Honestly, just use a reference at that point. Here's a list of names for the top ones and also the bottom ones. And since a majority of the wrist is tendons, the bones near the wrist are actually quite visible, especially the bone on this side over here at the pinky finger. And the elbow is also pretty visible since it isn't really covered by a lot of muscles. Now it's time for the hands. Let's start with the palm. For the palm, it's made up by a bunch of bones, which is where your finger bones are attached to. And no, I'm not gonna name every single one of them. The important thing to keep in mind is that the bones of the hand are what makes the knuckles on the fingers, and they can be quite visible. Here on the back of the hand, we got knuckles at the base of the fingers and also at each area where the fingers can bend. The more you bend your fingers, the more visible the knuckles will be. Outside of the bones are the tendons. These are the same tendons from earlier, connecting from the forearm. The skinnier hands that you have, the more visible the tendons will likely be. If we flip the palm over, we can simplify the palm into 3 main sections. These 3 sections of skin and muscles is quite visible from different angles. You can see that it has form and depth. The thenar here is a part of your thumb, and the hyperthenar is on the other side here near the pinky finger. There is also a section of flesh here right below your fingers. I'm not sure if this is the actual name, but some call it the interdigital. There's more parts here at the thumb, but you rarely notice them and it's gonna look like it's one big part anyways. For the little wrinkles and folds here on the hand, there's gonna be 2 folds here at the interdigital, splitting them from the other parts, and 2 here that separates the thenar. When drawing and constructing the palm and the 4 fingers, the hand curves a bit. Keep in mind that the curves will be bigger and bigger, further out towards the fingertips. According to a lot of guides, we can split the fingers and palm into 2 sections that are about the same length. Wait a minute. Alright, it's time for a bit of anatomy to kind of explain this. So, the finger bones overall are a bit longer than the palm, and it's a bit more clear here from the back of the hand. But because the front of the palm has this little section of flesh, the palm will appear a bit longer than the fingers here at the front. Look, when you fold your fingers in, you can see the section of flesh over here, the interdigital, folding along with your fingers. You can kind of see this section of flesh creating little flaps between each finger. In short, if you split the hand into 2 sections, from the front, the palm will appear a tiny bit longer than the fingers, but from the back, the fingers instead will appear a tiny bit longer than the palm. Here's a nice tip to keep in mind. The length between the first 2 knuckles is about the same length as the 2 last parts of the finger. Now for the thumb. The first part of the thumb bone should be about half the size of the palm. It also makes a little bump down here, and there's a little flap of skin between the palm and the thumb. The rest of the thumb, just like the other fingers, should be about the same size as the base. Finally, for connecting the hand to the arm, I see a lot of people forgetting the existence of the wrist. It's what allows our hands to move around. The wrist will cause the hand to shift a bit forward, so it won't really align 100% with the forearm. The heel of the hand, this area down here near the wrist, is where the most pressure will come from when you push something. When you clench your fist together or grab something, the fingers will naturally align with the heel and the thumb. To finish off my hand study, I decided to do a drawing involving a bunch of hands. This was not as bad as my torso study. I think my feet study is going to be more challenging since I don't actually have that much knowledge on feet. I guess when you do something and get started, suddenly this one daunting task that seemed overwhelming at first will suddenly become a lot less scary once you actually start doing it step by step. Alright, bye bye everyone.